Right, morning, welcome. As we were saying, and we were corrected, it's not spring yet, but we've got a spring in our step and a spring in our thoughts, so we're bouncing around. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether we have the right tools in our toolbox this morning and whether we can work out whether we should be using them or not. I'm not too sure where this is going to take us. So Lee, I think I'll hand over to you for your thoughts to kick us off.
Thanks, Ivan, and nice to see everyone. And so thank you to Mpumelelo for prompting this thinking around tools. And I know yesterday he was talking about systems and really as tools that we have in society. And I thought just to bring that down to our personal lives and what are the tools that we have in our toolbox and how do we know what to use when. And so in thinking about what tools do I have available to me, besides my experience and the expertise I've built over the years or even hard work, I realized that one of the tools that I use fairly well, I think, is reading people. And I use that, and that's one of the ways that I test what to do when. It's not just reading people in the moment, but getting to know them. And I have a couple of examples with clients. For example, there's one that I know I interact with him best and I get the best work when I have a lunch with him. He's a foodie, he's a casual person. And so if I invite him out to lunch and we have a good chat over a meal, then it works well. That's how he relates, and that works well when I connect with him in that way. I've got another client, don't email him. You must rather call him. And it works differently for different people. So it's reading somebody, understanding where they're coming from, what works for them in terms of how they like to be communicated with. So that's one of the things that I use. A tool that I thought I was good at is asking questions. And but I was caught out recently. Somebody in a meeting just tore a strip off me for something that he thought I should have done or I did do, and he didn't like the way I did it. And it wasn't Trevor. we have Trevor, Ivan, and I have sorted out whatever things we need to sort. But he just plowed into me, and I went immediately into fight and flight mode, both. So I sort of froze and then fought back. And honestly, neither of those things are very helpful tools. So I didn't do very well then. But when I did step back and when I did think, I realized that there were so many assumptions that were flying across this conversation that I really needed to have paused and asked a whole lot more questions. So I could keep going on, but those are the ones that come to mind. Simple tools, but ones that I've recognized are invaluable when I use them at the right time. So I'd love to just hear from you. What tools do you have in your toolbox, and how do you know when to use them?
Greatly, thanks. I'm really worried now. I always thought I was a bit of a closed book, but clearly to you, I'm just an open book. And I think all good ladies know that a way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So yeah, just invite us out for lunch. We're quite happy. So, and seeing that I almost forgot Ed yesterday. Ed, we'll start with you this morning.
Well, I've been crushed this morning. I always thought I was a man of mystery, but Lee knows all my dark secrets now, so that's a pity. Yeah, it's an interesting subject, isn't it, I think, because I think what works on a personal level, we can also translate onto a community level and then onto a national level. And I was really thinking about a situation that happened when I was running. I thought I'd tell a running story because I am trail running man. I was helping with a race on the south coast of England. The weather was atrocious. There were various distances, and one was marathon, one was ultra marathon. And quite cruelly, the ultra marathoners had to come through the marathon finish to go out on their next loop to finish off. And a friend of mine came in, very experienced ultra runner, and she was moaning about the conditions, saying she was going to quit. I knew it was a training race for her for a much bigger thing she was taking on, and I knew that she kind of would be better if she finished. So I gave her a really good telling off, told her to put a good girl pants on, and sent her on her way into the storm. And then about 10 minutes later, another friend came in who had less experience and was also training for the same event as my other friend. And I gave her a big hug and a big cuddle, but she was moaning about the conditions and she was going to quit. And I said, look, you know, if you can actually get out there and do this, you will really, really be a lot closer to your goal than you were before. And you know, you can do it, and you can do it. And I encouraged and persuaded her. Just before she was going to go out, she came up with this thing. Well, she said, I've only got a really bad head torch because I only put it in my pack so I'd pass kit check, because I didn't expect to be out after dark because I thought I'd be in before now. I said, well, that's not a problem. I got a really good one. Here you are, you can borrow mine. And I sent her out into the storm and all that sort of stuff. Anyhow, when they came back, both of them said exactly the same thing to me. They said that was exactly what I needed. And one I'd bullied and one I'd cuddled. And I think part of it was because I knew one was motivated by carrots, moving towards goals. That was the one I cuddled. And one was motivated by sticks of moving away from failure. And I think you need to understand that kind of motivation. And that's a bit too binary, but it's an example. It's a whole spectrum. But also I think it's understanding where people are in their journey. The first friend that came in was very experienced. She'd been through a lot of tough stuff. I could turn around to her and say, look, you did so-and-so in the past, you know, get on and do this. This is little compared to what you've done before, you know, man up. Actually, Lee, is there expression for woman up? I'd love to know that after I've finished, because, you know, man up seems wrong when you're talking to a woman. And the other one was only just starting on her journey as an ultra runner. She hadn't got much experience to fall back on. She hadn't got achievements to say, this is how you've done. And I think that's exactly the same with countries, isn't it? Some countries have got a deep experience, a deep history, and other countries haven't. The same with communities. So I think you've got to judge the character. And I suppose, you know, South Africa's a big outdoorsy place. Maybe lockdown's harder for you guys than it is for us guys in the UK who aren't so outdoorsy. So, you know, it's your experience, your character, the journey you've been on, where you are on that journey, and also where you're trying to get to and where you've come from. So that's my thoughts. And I'd love to know whether there is a female expression of man up. And one final tip, if you're looking for a team to help you in an ultra marathon, pick women, because when a woman tells you to man up, that really does tell you something.
Great, thanks, Ed. Well, I think we have to go across to the grandmother in the group after that. So, Trevor, over to you.
Now, this subject or topic is far too deep for me. So what I'm trying to do at this time in my life is throw all the tools out of the toolbox. And the only thing that I've got left in at the moment, Ed, are water wings. So really, I think what we're doing is just trying to float above all the negativity that's coming to us at the moment. So my water wings are extremely important in the toolbox. But I must say, Mpumelela's talk yesterday about context really resonated with me in a big way, and has given me room for deep thought. And I think we've got to really make certain that he explores that route, because I think it can add to an understanding of how different people are reacting positively or negatively to all the different inputs that are coming in locally and around the world. So I just want to be flippant and say the toolbox that I have, I've thrown all the tools out. Water wings are what I've got at the moment, and I'm just learning to swim at my tender young age.
Thanks, Trevor. I thought it was all your toys that you used to throw out the cot, not your tools out your toolbox. So it was...
I did that yesterday, and that's why Lee was having a go at me today.
Okay, good. Right, Herman, let's come across to you next.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, I think it's not only important that we have a toolbox, but it's also important to know which tools suit me specifically. Because I don't think that, let's say, even though he's thrown all his tools out of the out of the box, I'm sure Trevor has got different tools he would use, which may not necessarily suit me. And also, I think what we need to do is to hone our skills in using tools. I do that through observation and reflection. And I'd like to use two South African contexts with regards to where I think we're using the wrong tools. For example, people believe, I mean, South Africa is a democratic country, and yet people believe that voting every 5 years is what a good citizen in a democracy should do, which in my opinion is by far not enough. There are other tools we need to use to make a democracy functioning. And the other example I have is where South Africans are really facing huge challenges. I mean, the post office wants what, 7 million. Gordon wants an SAA, which is a pipe dream, etc., etc. We're talking. Eskom wants to increase tariffs by 25%. Their debts are just gone up from 450 to 488 billion rands, etc., etc. So we have got huge challenges. And what do South Africans do? They bitch and mourn on social media. And we only woke up to corruption because people now were starting to steal really from absolute necessities, namely whether it was food parcels, etc., etc. I think there we need a tool which is a lot more radical than just mourning and bitching in social media. And again, we waited by far too long to even show our disgust with what was happening during COVID-19. I think we should have shown our disgust long time ago, and a lot more radical. There you really need a big hammer. Thank you.
Thanks, Herman. Yeah, lots of challenges in how we actually mobilize in the right way, I think, and that's the key. You know, there's ways to mobilize and there's ways not to mobilize, I think, and unfortunately, often locally the mobilization happens in the wrong fashion and becomes destructive. So, yeah, interesting challenges. Right, Una, let's come across to you next.
Yeah, I think also a little bit like Lee was saying, one of the things I'm good at, I think, is also reading people most of the time, sometimes struggling with that. But I also find, and it can be a little bit of it can be a blessing, but it can also be very irritating, is that sometimes I can actually feel what other people feel. Like when we sit on the couch on a Sunday afternoon and my husband starts getting stressed about the week, I just suddenly feel that feeling, and then I ask him, have you just started stressing or whatever? So especially when somebody is close to me. So yeah, that's the one thing. And then I think listening. I'm quite good at hearing what people are saying and also what they're not saying if I'm really focused. And sometimes when I sit with somebody that tries to cut somebody off that's trying to say something, it's often frustrating to me, because I can see that there's some good information and the person is on their way to just really say something amazing, and then somebody cuts them off. I normally get quite irritated about something like that. Yeah, so I think that, and I like to try and see things holistically and not take it on face value. So I like to pull different, be more integrated in the way I look at things, which also has a good and a bad side, because I can sometimes sit on making a decision for a very long time because I'm not trying to look at it from all angles. So that can also go into the negative. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, analysis paralysis is sometimes quite a challenge, especially for analytics. I'm also an analytical, so yeah, it can be an interesting challenge at times. Donovan, let's come across to you next.
Morning, everyone. Yes, I think mine is in line with what Edward said. As I also commented, using words as tools to shepherd people. But the thing I'm thinking about is a sheep listens to the voice of the shepherd. So if you're not a shepherd, the sheep won't listen. So it also depends on who you want to shepherd, who you want to use your tools on. So if you use your tools on the wrong people, you won't get the right results. Thank you.
Thanks, Donovan. Yeah. Also, the question is, does the sheep listen to the wolf? I'm not too sure. You might have a bit of an impact there as well. So yeah, but it's interesting, that connection between the led and the leader, I think is an interesting one that we could probably explore at some point as well. So talking of those, let's come across to Mr. Klutti. Jasper.
Good morning. A part of me still got stuck yesterday with Trevor's example of the guy paid 50,000 for undoing a dent, and I can just imagine my shock and frustration if I was that guy of the Bentley. But anyway, coming back to the tools, so I first had to define it for myself to say, all right, that would be skills. So like call it people skills, technical skills, unique things like intellectual property that I can use towards whatever I want to do. And then the way in using it would be like the previous speakers have said, read the situation, learn to listen, to ask questions, and observe responses, because I think like Ed's story, in the same situation, people don't respond the same. So you have to be adjustable there. But then I just, my mind went on to say, I'm fairly lazy and I don't want to carry a lot of things. So what is probably another way to do it is have a lot of people around you with a lot of toolboxes and study their tools and how they use their tools. And then borrow tools from other people, or not even borrow, find a way to let them use the tools, but you're part of the equation. So I just want to bring that maybe into the situation that if we really want to benefit society, your little toolbox is too small. But imagine what we can do with a whole lot of people with the little tools, and we all learn how each one uses his tools, and we can maximize the use of the tools.
Thanks, Jasper. Remind me never to have you as a customer. Sounds like you'd be a terrible, terrible customer. I mean, you just think of that guy. If he'd taken the Bentley away for 3 days, you know, kept it there, done his little tapping exercise and come back 3 days later, the guy would have happily paid him 55 grand. Why wouldn't he pay him 55 grand when he did it there on the spot, you know? So must we hide our talents and our tools to get fair value for them? I'm not sure that's a good model either. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge. So Cecile, let's come across to you next.
Sure. I always thought I was good at my intuition with people was good, but I don't know. Lately, this last 5 months, probably not. But because you don't have any even visual contact with suppliers, with buyers, which is a problem. We always thought having face-to-face meetings is the best. Well, even having a meeting where you can see someone is probably second best. But meetings where you see no one, it's just on WhatsApp, is horrible, horrible, horrible. Yeah, so that's that. But having said that, I think my best tool is probably being positive and seeing the positive in every situation, to try and see any problem from a different angle, trying to see if there's someone says, oh, this is so difficult, whatever, then I would, whether they've asked for advice or not, I would try to give my advice. And it drives my husband berserk when I give him advice and he didn't ask for the advice. To say, have you thought about it in this way? So that's probably my best tool that I have. And I would still like to listen to Mboleo's thing from yesterday, but Mr. Eskom put a stop to it last night when I was trying to listen to it.
All right, thanks, Cecilia. Eskom is an interesting challenge, and one wonders how we solve that problem. I'm not too sure. So, Steve, let's come across to you next.
Thanks, Ivan. Sorry, I ducked and ran earlier. The plumber came to fix the drains, which all it means is I didn't have the right tool available for the job, so I had to get somebody to come in and help out. Thinking about this, last night I did a couples counseling session with a young couple who are preparing to get married, and that was quite a cool just moments in terms of exploring tools, that they had reached out looking for help because they did not have the right tools at their disposal from their families of origin to be able to perhaps start and sustain a healthy relationship together. And so those are a lot of tools that I use most often, is the relational tools between people, and also the intrapersonal, so within the self as well. And yeah, so that was a fun experience. I'm not going to share too much. I haven't been around that much, but I'm enjoying listening. Thanks, people.
Great, thanks, Steve. Yeah, it's interesting, and just coming back to what Jasper was saying about borrowing tools from other people. I was just trying to look up an old Henry Ford quote that I remembered when he was asked about his qualifications, and he was saying, well, you know, why do I need those qualifications? I just hire them, you know. So it was a bit of a paraphrase, I think, but it was something along those sorts of lines. So, you know, you get yourself into the right position, surround yourself with the right people. You don't need the tools. You just need to be able to manage them. So, you know, that's a thought that crossed my mind. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, isn't it? You know, because also one of the other things that I recall is, you know, if all of us have the same skills around the table, then all of us except for one of us are superfluous. So, you know, I think you got to surround yourself with the right kind of people who have the right skills and the right tools to help you achieve your objectives. So, a bit of both, I think, from my side. So, Lee, yeah, back to you. I think we've done everyone this morning. I haven't forgotten anyone. So, your thoughts and what's on the cards for Friday morning?
Thanks, everyone. You know, it's always enlightening to just get an inkling of where people's thinking is, and it just adds richly to, you know, you think, oh yeah, that's absolutely right. Or I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. So really, really appreciate that. Trevor's wanting to say something?
I just want to explore Jasper's comment on Trevor Carty's little story yesterday. and why he didn't like the story. I see we've got a couple of minutes to the bottom of the hour. If he can explain himself, please.
No, I've heard that story in a similar analogies with the ship's engine and stuff like that. So I grasped the lesson in it. But, you know, I think purely from a people skills point of view, I would have kept the Bentley for 3 days and I would have collected my 55,000 and I wouldn't have let this guy on how simple the job was. So that for me would have been fair. But I'm thinking that in that story, although he scored momentarily victory and have the bragging rights with that very rich guy to say, you know, that's why you pay me your 50,000 and you would have been happy to pay me anyway. I think he lost a customer because he scored his bragging rights. And that guy would tell his other friends, listen, don't go to that guy. Because he, you know, he'd overcharge. Whereas if he did it correctly, that Bentley guy could have become his best referrer for business going forward. So, you know, my mind was just playing about what is his motive to do it. So I know for the motive, for the purpose of the story, of illustrating how valuable is years and years of experience and why people should be willing to pay for it. But yeah, so that was where my thoughts were going. Not so much about the fact that he did ask the 50,000 for a simple job. It was more the manner in which it happened, and I was just putting myself in the shoes of that Bentley guy and think, what? I've just been taken for a ride. Okay, I'll pay, but reluctantly, and now I'm actually an unhappy customer. Every time I look at my Bentley and I look down this bonnet, I think of, shit, it cost me 55,000 or whatever the cost may be.
Okay, so Lee nailed it for me. Don't make a fool of your customer. I thought you were questioning the value that this particular individual was offering, and that's in the engineer story. And I think it's something that we all juggle with in today. The value that we have as individuals that seems to have been undermined by social media or the internet or the offer, just because he can do it in 30 seconds doesn't mean that the value to the individual is undermined. So I understand the different views in the story. Difficult one.
Can I add something?
Please.
In some ways, the customer is already a fool, because in terms of buying a Bentley and spending that much amount of money on a vehicle that a different vehicle and a cheaper vehicle would do exactly the same job, they're already a fool because their ego has already led them to that point. And so their ego is at play when they're concerned about spending 55 grand on a minor fix. So I'm not interested so much in the point from the mechanic's point of view. I'm with you, Trevor, in terms of if it takes you 30 seconds to do a job or 30 hours to do a job, you're being paid for your expertise. But he could have gone around the corner to a backyard mechanic and probably had the same service on the same vehicle. And it would have cost him 2 grand for somebody to take his dent out. But in some ways, he's already a fool because his ego has put him in that position. It's just a different perspective.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I many years ago, I was working with a chap who was consulting to the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry, and he always quoted his services on the result and not on the process. And I remember the one job that he did for one of the large manufacturers. They were looking to get major savings on their stock holdings and things like that. And I think he quoted them, and this I'm talking about the middle 90s. I think he quoted them 5 million rand for the job to save them, tens of millions of rands of their stock holdings, which they happily agreed to. And he went into the factory and looked around, and 3 hours later he came back with a report and he says, "Yeah, this is how you do it, and implement this, and pay me my 5 million rand." And in that case, they happily did, because the savings actually materialized. But, you know, he got paid $5 million for a 3-hour job, you know, because of his knowledge and his experience and his background. But to get yourself into that position, I think when you can quote on that basis is an interesting challenge. And it's one that I've grappled with for most of my career in systems, because we tend to get paid by the hour, not by the value that you deliver, and it becomes an interesting challenge. I think that's why some of the very large software organizations have made so much money, is because they charge for perceived value and not for labor development and hours. So yeah.
I see Herman is unmuted. Before I say, did you want to say something, Herman?
Well, I just wanted to say, if your name is Bezos and you've got $200 billion as a little fortune, I mean, what is a Bentley?
And talking about context, you can see Mpumelela's really got me going. I was actually thinking about it this morning, and about the blockchain solution for transparency of verifying where money goes to. So Ivan or Jasper, what would you charge government if you could come up with a blockchain solution in the next 2 days to save them 500 billion in losses? What would your charge be for that blockchain solution?
No, I think 10% is probably fair.
Jasper?
I think you just confused me with the issue there with government, because I don't trust government from a bar of soap. Doesn't matter what I charge them, they won't pay me. And I think blockchain by its, okay, so if you just said come up with a solution, because I don't think necessarily blockchain is one of the possible solutions. Yeah, anyway, so but I think if it's a real issue and they are really worried that they will lose their right to govern, and you can call, you know, call the shots on that. I think, like Ivan said, you know, pick a number, but probably not more than 10%.
Okay, so there's 50 billion to save 500 billion. So quite interesting. And I was just thinking, as Jasper was talking, he was spinning his wheels like a politician. So trail running man, this guy, you can get him on a treadmill, because he doesn't answer a question like that. Okay. No, quite interesting.
Tell me, is the knowledge about blockchain generally known? Otherwise, I'd like to suggest it as a point of conversation in the group, because I really have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, look, it's
but maybe yeah. I'm the exception, so I have to do my own reading.
Yeah, because it's an interesting technology that is coming to the forefront at the moment. It has its limitations currently, but yeah, that's a whole nother discussion, as you say. But yeah, anyway, let's finish off with an old joke, which some of you probably know, about the aircraft company that was producing these new fighter planes, and every time they went into a radical turn, the wings tore off, and the engineers couldn't solve these problems, and they put out tenders after tenders to get these issues solved, and eventually our local friend Van der Merwe came to them and said, look, I'll solve your problem, you know, for R1 million, you know, just give me R1 million, I'll fix your issue. He said, well, we've tried all these fancy engineers and all the rest of it. What have we got to lose? So he said, well, it's actually quite simple. All you got to do is drill a series of holes along the lines where the wings are tearing off, and your problems will be solved. And they said, but how can that be the case? So he said, just do it. So it's all right. Well, we've got nothing else to lose. We've tried everything else. So they went and they drilled a series of holes along the wings where the wings were tearing off, and planes took off and they flew perfectly and had no problems and no issues. And they came back to Van, and I said, okay, well, here's your R1 million, but how did you know how to do that? He said, well, just think about it. He says, does your toilet paper ever tear on the perforations properly? So
that's called a cock joke, man. No.
Absolutely. Right, Lee, I think on that note, we have to hand back to you and the end of the session for the day.
Oh dear, I don't know. This conversation went south very quickly.
Our board meeting is over again.
you know, I before this sort of end little bit, I was thinking about us discussing this idea. So I had this idea of tracking. You know, we've used this analogy of reading people or understanding context, and what does it take to track? And I know Trevor has expertise there, and so I was thinking about what tracking skills do we need in terms of knowing the lay of the land and reading context. So that's one route, but I was actually now with Herman asking about blockchain, I thought maybe let's just flip it completely and not keep going down the route that we have been doing, but let's talk about fourth industrial revolution. We haven't had a discussion around that, about new technologies, about what is changing in our environment that is now revolutionizing the way we do things and is going to continue to change. We use the word disrupt. I'm not sure if that's there are disruptive technologies, but they are also enabling and democratizing technologies. And how can we harness these technologies for the good of society? Because that's also what we've been talking about, is how do we do all of this? That was also what was prompted by Mpumelelo's article, is, you know, how do we harness systems for the good of society? Let's ask that same question with relation to technology. So let's and share our knowledge. What do you know about fourth industrial revolution type technologies? What are the tools that we are able to use from that toolbox? And blockchain is one of them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Great, thanks, Lee. A techie discussion tomorrow, yay! All right.
I'm getting my water wings out.
All right, folks, have a fantastic day further, and we'll see you in the morning. Go well. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.